Hello and welcome back to my craft room. I've been having a lovely time this week playing with my Stitch Kit Craft of the Month box, which is all about embroidery this month. So one of the stars of the show in the box was this book by designer Anila Hoey, who I must admit I'd never heard of, but now I've looked her up and like, wow, what a rabbit hole. But this book is full of 250 of her designs as embroidery transfers. So I've been having a field day. You might, if you've seen the previous video, you might have seen, I'll link to it anyway, you might have seen where I started on this. So one of the other things that came in the box was a plain calico bag, and what I've been doing is working on transforming that into something a bit more fun as a project bag. So let's have a look at the desk. It doesn't look very impressive like that because I've got it inside out. I'm actually in the process of pressing it. I have tried to keep my backside relatively, for me, neat and tidy. For me this is very neat and tidy and not the usual tangled mass of threads and knots and things. Not that it's going to show, because one of the things I'm going to do today is line this bag, but I just wanted to practice doing that because I think I don't know, I just found it quite an interesting challenge to try and just see if I could manage to keep it neat and tidy. The other thing was that I didn't want lots of threads going back and forth, I didn't want any risk of them showing through. It's a fairly thick calico, but I didn't want any indication of threads running across the back, so that was another reason. Anyway, so I had to look up how best to press this without squashing my stitching. Watched a couple of videos and I've done a bit of experimenting, and this is working for me. So this is the mat that came with my little craft iron that I've got off to the side here. Lovely little nifty little iron this is. It's a quilted bear one, and it came with this mat and this stand and a bag to put it in, and like a mesh thing you can put over top for delicate fabrics as well. That might have worked for the embroidery, actually, thinking about it. Anyway, what I've been doing is I've also put a towel underneath here, and I've got my water spray that I use for my arty products. You can see how covered in paint it is, and all I'm doing is giving a little squirt of this, just enough to, I won't do it again now, I'll show you on the other side, just enough to that it all kind of steams as I'm pressing it. I'll show you in a minute. And so that's taken all the wrinkles out from where I had it bunched up in my hand or around the hoop while I was stitching into it, and also to take out the pen. I used a heat erasable pen to just, in my own handwriting, to put the words "so happy" here. The heat from the iron has taken that pen out as well now. I think that could do with just a little bit more of a press, so let's just let it soak in for a minute, because it's new fabric. There was a bit of a finish on it as well, so just sort of, I've got this almost on maximum because it's cotton thread, it's cotton fabric, and I'm just sort of pressing those wrinkles out. And as I do that, the fabric, you can see the fabric, that water that I sprayed is evaporating. That's all dry now, and because of the texture of the towel, the stitches are able to sink into that, and not, so you don't lose the texture of the stitches. That's better. Still not perfect, but for me, I'm quite proud. This is my best ever effort embroidery. So on the other side, I've kept it quite simple. And I've just, again, I did it in my own handwriting. You can see where I've had the hoop in there. I did it in my own handwriting with the heat erasable pen. So I need to just smooth out any wrinkles. It's not too bad because I did keep it inside the hoop, and just remove that pen. So I'm going to give this a bit of a spritz now. I'm funny, I'm just kind of, I've just got into the habit of kind of almost not quite rubbing it into the fabric, but just smoothing it into the fabric, letting it soak in a second, and then going in with the iron. It's a bit like when you block your crochet after you've done it. It just seems to look so much better after this pressing. Just make sure all that pen has gone as well. The lady I was watching on YouTube was showing how she'd been using water soluble embroidery transfer paper, so she washed that away, and while it was still dripping wet, she didn't wring it out or anything. She didn't want to make more wrinkles, I guess. She just brought it as it was to her ironing board. So I hadn't had to get mine wet, hence I'm using a spray, because I do think that steam does help. Okay, let's have a look. Got a little mark there, which is a bit annoying. But yeah, I think that's done the trick. We'll get the towel out of the way now. Turn this the right way out so we can have a proper look. I took I showed you in the first video how I took the bag apart down the side just to make it easier to get to, so I've got to stitch that back up in a bit. Yeah, that's how it's looking. I did wonder about, because I did an extra little piece here in this embroidery hoop, I put an extra piece over the top, sort of applied it on. I didn't show this bit on the other video, so I'll show you what I've done there. Because I wanted a different design to the one that was in the transfer, in the embroidery hoop transfer, so I just picked one of the other designs in the book, which was this cat. Applied it, so that's kind of, that is a little bit more wrinkly there, and it did occur to me that because I've put that extra piece over the top, I could snip into the back here and pad that out and have that slightly padded, but I think I'm not going to. I think I'm just going to leave it at that now. But yeah, definitely an option and an idea I might play with. But while I've been sitting here quietly enjoying the stitching, I've been thinking of all sorts of other ideas I want to try. I'm really happy with this. I love the bright, cheerful colours. I love these sort of scattered designs. Makes me very happy. I'm very tempted to just do some random straight stitching all over the place just because I love to do it, but I've stopped myself doing it. The designs stand out really nicely against the plain background, so I'm going to leave them as they are. You can see where I've just ironed it out there with the towel, you can see that you've still got the dimension of the stitches there. So that's a good one to show you. I've done the scissors there in the chain stitch. You can see it's not squashed it all flat, it's still got that texture to it. And even the little French knots I found, actually, I think I mentioned before, the colonial knots I did on this set of pins I thought worked much better. They seem to come out much neater for me, colonial knots. And there I did them the same. The French knots were a bit messier. Have a look at this side. So this was just my own. I just hand wrote it on copy paper, put it underneath and traced over it with my heat erasable pen. That seemed to work okay. Got a little mark there which is annoying. I need to stitch this back up, and the seams on this bag, I was so impressed with the quality of this bag. Look, they're done. It's not quite like a flat fell seam. I don't know what you would call this seam, but it's been doubled over and over so that you've got this nice neat seam with no raw edges at all. So I'm going to try and put that back together in the same way. That shouldn't be too difficult. I will be getting my machine out for this part, I think. It seems madness not to. Yeah, so I just need to follow the original seam lines. I should be able to put that back together okay. And then my idea was to line it, partly just because I think it'll look really cool. There's a nice bright colour fabric inside. Also that will give me a chance to put a pocket, and it will cover up my insides too. I don't think they actually look too bad for me, but and then I'm going to cut the corners, the bottom two corners out of this bag. I think 7cm squares are going to be about right, here and here, because that will enable me to kind of box the bottom of this bag, and I think make it a more useful shape for how I want to use it. I'll show you the fabrics that I've been thinking about to line the inside. So I nearly went for this because I've got lots of it, plenty big enough piece of it. And it doesn't not go, but I don't think it usually does anything for them. Then I saw this and absolutely fell in love with it. I thought, that is perfect, that's what I want. I've got those colours in there and everything, but I haven't got a big enough piece of this, which is frustrating. I've got several pieces, I could patch it together. Then I found this, which I love as well, this cactus print, bright yellow, but I've only got this one piece, and I thought, well, I could do two different prints, one for each kind of side of the bag. And I found this one, which I also think would be quite nice, and I wonder if I could make the pocket out of this out of some of this. So I think that's what I'm going with. I'm going to, the cactus print, which I absolutely love. It's a nice big square of that. That is going to live to fight another day. Because this green piece is actually just about big enough to line the whole bag, I think. Only just. I'm going to have to do quite a narrow seam. I think I'm going to go with this and do the pocket in the floral fabric. So what I'm going to do is get my machine set up, and I'm going to just redo this side seam. So I'm back to kind of square one, as it were, and then we'll take it from there. I'll probably attach the lining just around the top. I'll show that in a minute, and do a kind of decorative blanket stitch or something. I've got loads and loads of the threads left that came in the box. These are my leftovers, which I've been very tidy. My tangled leftovers, I've sorted them all out and twisted them together to keep them nice. I've still got all of these threads left, and that one, which I was just using for the words. So yeah, more than enough to do a blanket stitch around there. And I've still got a couple of other projects I really want to try. I mustn't forget that I've got, this came in the box. Oops. Well, all of this came in the box. The snips, they've been really good to use. The little needle minder, which is magnetising itself to that at the moment, which is really handy to have clipped onto my hoop. The actual hoop as well, of course. I did have 5 needles on here, but I managed to lose 2 of them, despite having 2 needle minders. And this, which I mustn't forget I've got, because I think it'll look really nice hanging off the bag actually when I'm all done. And my chalk marker, I'll use that in a minute to mark these squares off of here. I think 7 centimetres just looks about right to me. So 7 that way. And 7 that way. This is a chalk marker, so I can brush it off afterwards if it's any of it is showing. That's not a perfect square, but that's fine. That'll be okay. So I'll do that on both sides. I'm just going to do the side seam first and straighten up the edges of my green piece there, and decide which one of these pieces I'm going to use as a pocket. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to set all of that up, and then I'll be back in a mo. I've re-stitched the side of my bag. I've gone a bit crooked, but I don't think it's going to matter too much, so I'm not going to worry about doing it again. And I also decided not to bother doing the lovely neat seam that they've done, because it's all going to be inside the lining. It's not going to show anyway. It was just quicker just to run a line of stitching along there. So I need to trim that off. I've also stitched this piece ready for the pocket, which I need to attach before I stitch the side seams on my lining. I'm going to keep this really, really simple, because I'm kind of making it up as I go along, and I'm so far away from being an expert, it's not even funny. I could do a line of zigzag or something there if I was worried, but as I say, because it's all going to be enclosed within the lining, I don't think it's going to be a problem. That will go in my little pot there to get used as closures or something. This bit, if I wasn't lining it, I would now top stitch this down as well. Turn this right way up, give it a bit of a press, and then this piece I just cut a strip wide enough to go. It was only just about, it's not really quite wide enough to go across, but I'm hoping it'll be okay. So I've just done a seam along there. Can now press this. I ought to have pressed the seam open actually before I did this, but I just thought this is the quickest, the easiest way I could think to create this little pocket. And the idea is that will form the pocket. I'll stitch that on to one side of my lining in a minute. See, that's a bit crooked there. That'll probably end up going that way, so you won't even know. You won't tell anyone, will you? So I'll do that and then run a line of stitches, just stitch it just straight down there to create 2 little separate pockets. I just thought that would be quite useful in my bag. This fabric didn't tear quite straight, that's why I've what I'll do is I'll make sure the seam there is on the inside, and then you won't see it. You'll never know. I'm just going to cut this little 7cm square out the bag. Brave, brave. And then I want to do the same this side. Keep them for something else. Okay, let's hope I haven't made a mistake now, because I'll be really annoyed. So now if I put it back inside out again, then where I've got those corners cut out, all I need to do is squish them up together like this, and stitch along that edge, and that will kind of give me a boxy bottom. So the bag will kind of stand a bit, so it's easier to rummage in, and it will just be a bit sort of roomier in the bottom. And I always think it's best to be roomier in the bottom. There, so just across there like that. Same on the other side. Let's get them pinned ready. I can take the whole lot to the machine at the same time, and then that should, you can see how that's going to go now, I think. Yeah, lovely, lovely. So then for the lining, I've just cut it so that this piece looks same size as the bag was to start with a bit extra up the top, because I need to be able to turn that over and attach it to the top. And then I will cut the same squares out the bottom of the lining as well. But first thing I want to do is put this pocket in it, and that's going to sit, think about there, I want it to be, I think that's going to be about right. I wish it went all the way to the edges, because I was hoping to just like attach it by, obviously I need to attach along the bottom, I need to do my centre thing so I get two pockets, but I was hoping that it would be attached here by being enclosed within the seam, but I think just being on the safe side, I'm going to stitch it down there as well, just in case it doesn't all get caught up in the seam, because you can see it's not really quite long enough. Okay, let's just stick some pins in here, good measure. I think maybe rather than have the pocket divided right down the middle, I think maybe I'll divide it there, because this would be good for putting sort of longer, narrower things, and then this would be big enough to put something like a pattern or something in. So yeah, I'm going to do that. Never change your mind, I could always stitch some in by hand as well. So I'm going to put my pocket here. Can you tell at all that I'm making this up as I go along? Completely. So I'm going to stitch that around there, along there, and then just one line down here. So I've got these two pockets. And then I will stitch down the side seams. And cut the, I could cut the corners off now actually. So yeah, once I put my pocket on, then I'll stitch the side seams down to there, and then I'll pinch these corners together like I did with the other one. So I'll end up with that kind of box bottom lining as well. And then I'll be putting the two together, probably by hand. I've done the stitching there, so you can see where I've stitched across those corners. I've now got this sort of box bottom shape. Hang on. So the bag will kind of sit open like that, and you can sort of see what you got in the bottom, which is really handy when you, especially if it's something you're going to want to be rummaging in, like a project bag. There's my box bottom. I like how that looks on the back, just the plain. It kind of reminds me of like a Sainsbury's carrier bag. I think it's partly because of the colours, but it just looks a bit like a supermarket carrier bag. I quite like that. and then on the front we've got all the little fun bits. Okay, so then I've done the same with the lining, where I cut the squares out the corners of the lining piece, because I cut them out before I did the side seam. Of course they ended up not perfect squares, so it needs to be a square once it's been seamed up. Let's see if I can explain what I mean. Yeah, so where I cut the squares at the bottom like that, because I then did the seam, that took that kind of 1/4 inch off, so the square was now 6 by 7 instead of 7 by 7. In other words, not really a square anymore, so I had to just cut a bit more off to allow for that. But that was obvious once I did it. I could see what I'd done. Turn this right way out. Let's hope the pocket looks okay, and let's hope both sides of the pocket got caught up in the seam. Yeah, it's looking okay so far. I would have actually caught up all of the pocket in the side seam, but that's where I sort of basted it on, or well, I didn't baste it, I just ran a line of machine stitching in case it didn't get caught up. So looks like I didn't really need that, but best be on the safe side. It's not really going to show anyway. Nice, happy with that. Whoops, the pocket's probably a bit lower down than it needed to be, but I think I'd rather it too low than too high, so I think that's okay. Right, so to put it into the bag, I've got to turn it inside out again, of course, because you see the lining kind of that way, don't you? So, and now I'm going to put it inside the bag and see how much I need to turn this down to make a neat edge. I don't know if you'll be able to see. I'm going to stand up to this a minute. So I've lined that up all up inside so that the corners that I've created that are on that kind of box to bottom line up with the corners of the bag like that, because I want to get it in there fairly straight before I attach it at the top. And yeah, by the looks of it, the pockets could have been higher, can you see, but I think they're okay like that as well. So I can either turn it in like this and try and have it meet up exactly with the top, or what I'm thinking I'll do is turn it over a little bit more and have it a little way down. And I want to attach it with a blanket stitch, so I'll actually get the iron and properly press down that much all around this piece. Then I will clip or pin these two pieces together, maybe tack as well, and I'm going to leave this edge not quite to the top, but near enough that if I then do a blanket stitch all around, that will be enough to attach this. So I'm going to go around and do that a minute, and I'll be back just to finish the blanket stitching with you, because I think that's one stitch I haven't shown. I used this one where I did the embroidery hoop transfer here. That was 3 rows of chain stitch around the outer edge. I did that during the Whip and Waffle Wednesday yesterday, and then I did a blanket stitch over the top of it, so it's given it quite a lot of dimension there. So yeah, I think blanket stitch was the only one I didn't show on here. Press all that now, clip and tack it together, and then I'll come back and do a bit of blanket stitch, and then I'm done with this. Well chuffed, thoroughly enjoying this. Moved on a bit. I decided it would be fun to put some little buttons where the handles join. They're not functional. I just thought it would be quite fun. I've got a whole load of gorgeous buttons, so I thought that would be a nice way to use them. Quite happy with how that's looking now. It amuses me how that just looks like a shop carrier bag. I've done 3 rows of stitching around there. That first green row is functional in that it's sort of holding the lining in, and then the others were just kind of for show, because I quite like the look of it and I like doing straight stitching, as you know. So what I'm going to do now is a little bit of blanket stitch around the top edge, which I think will look cute, and it will serve to hold the lining in place. I did, and I did think it might be quite fun to do some running stitches on the handles as well. What I'm going to do is put my needle in underneath here where it's going to be, the end's going to be lost, and I'm wiggling it between the two layers of this calico fabric. So the knot will be there, will end up being hidden inside. So to do blanket stitch, in case you've not done it before, let's zoom in a little bit. So you bring your needle, your thread out at the top edge of where you want the blanket stitch to be. And I think I'm going to do a long and short blanket stitch. So one short leg, one long leg. And alternate the whole way. So this is going to be a short leg. So I'm going to go down a little way from the edge, just enough to catch that lining in. I can feel with my finger where it is, and then you loop the thread around the back of the needle like that and put it through. This time I'm going to do a longer one, so I'm going to go down to here, loop the thread around the back. And you can do blanket stitch in any direction, left to right, right to left, upwards, downwards. So if you do it close together like that, you get like a buttonhole effect almost. So that's a short one and a long one, and I'm going to do another short one again. I'm just going to make sure the short ones just catch that lining fabric. And now a long one, and I'm going to try and make the distance between the stitches the same, so that ends up looking nice and neat. Oh, pulled that a bit too tight. And you can do fancy ones, like the one I watched Create and Craft with Christine doing, the German knotted blanket stitch, which ends up looking like lots of little people holding hands. Love that one. I quite like the long and short effect. I think that's quite cute. That's it. That's all there is to it. So I'm going to work my way around the rest of the top of the bag like that. There's other places I could add stitching. I could do like a faux top stitching down these side seams, and as I mentioned, I could do lots of straight stitching on the handles, which I really quite fancy doing. Or not straight stitching, I could do some Y stitch or something like that, just for a bit of interest. No, I haven't done that quite evenly, but I'm not bothered enough to take it out and start again. Start to make the short too long and the long not long enough, so I need to be a little bit more careful. It's a bit like a tape measure edging, doesn't it? Which is quite appropriate after all. Oh, I'll just pull my needle out now. Well, I think I'm going to stop there now. Let me just put that somewhere safe for a minute. I think that's sort of shown you enough to see where I'm going with that, and you can see that it's going to nicely hold that lining in at the back, along with that line of straight stitch that I've got there as well, that running stitch. So that's it. For this video, I'll carry on now and go all around the top and possibly add some stitch into the handles as well, just because I won't be able to resist. I know what I'm like. But yeah, let's come back out again here. I think you can see if I put these bits of fabric that I had earlier on in there, just to, so you can see that it's by boxing those corners, it means that the bag will sit upright like that and it's got that nice sort of roomy base to it. So I think it'll make it much more useful. Now, how on earth do I do a thumbnail of this? I don't really know how to show this. I want to put everything else in as well. So I've got the hoop, the little needle minder, magnetic holder, all of the threads. Oh, and I've got this to put on yet, haven't I? I shall be dangling this off the side as well. The snips, the chalk marker. Oh, and of course the book of transfers. There's no way I can show all of this in a thumbnail. I think that's probably about the best I'm gonna get, really. It's very hard to show everything, to show the whole thing on camera. I'll come back up now and show you like this, because that might be a bit more successful. Fun designs on both sides. I almost prefer that. Maybe I should have had that a bit further up, but thinking about it, I don't know. I could still put an outside pocket on the front as well. There's an idea. I might do that on the in that same fabric that I love. Yeah, I might do that. You can never have too many pockets, can you, on a project bag? Yeah, and I like the fun, colourful lining. Maybe I should make this my thumbnail, eh? Peekaboo! Yeah, very happy with that. I'm going to put all the rest of this stuff now that's left over inside that bag. I think I'll maybe take some photos of it as well, because yeah, once I've done that bit of stitching around the outside and around the top, I'll do a bit of I'll do some photos and share them tomorrow, because you can't really see it very well holding it up like that, or on the desk, really. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm thoroughly enjoying this box. I've got lots more ideas I want to try. I think maybe I'll at least try and do a couple more projects during the course of the month, and I think there'll be things that will go with my project bag. I think that would be quite nice to I think for the next one I'll use some old jeans or something, because I'd quite like to see what this would look like on a denim, and I'll try the water soluble embroidery transfer paper. I'll try using these transfers on that to see how that works out, and maybe make a little folder. I quite like the idea of using, where did I put this? This one that came out of the book. Oh, of course it's back to front, because it needs to be, because when you transfer it, it will reverse. But basically you can see it says cut once, measure twice. So I might make a little kind of a pouch to put my short ruler, my cutting wheel, things like that, cutting and measuring things in, which would be a good thing to have inside the project bag. So if I made it in denim, I could line it with that flowered fabric that I love, and it would all go together really nicely. I'm very excited about this. Buzzing with ideas. I hope you enjoyed it too, or found that inspiring. Don't forget, all the links will be in the description box below if you want to check out Stitch Kit for yourself. And if you do go for a mystery box, or the Craft of the Month box, or a monthly subscription, don't forget you've got that discount code you can use to get 10% off. That'll be in the description box as well. Thanks very much, as always, to my amazing channel members. I appreciate every single one of you. There are 34, 35 of us now? There are 34 of us now. I'll be scrolling up their names as I'm speaking. Thank you so much to them. It means such a lot to us. It really does. And thank you to everybody as well for just watching the videos and clicking the like button, leaving a comment, and making sure you're subscribed. It's free to subscribe, and it really helps me out. Okay, I'm really going to stop waffling now. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye.